the numbers of COVID-19 infections is rising in Malaysia. Already, most Malaysians are put in great difficulty because of this. And yet, in times like this, already we have an emergency declared. And yet, in times like this, leaders of political parties continue to defy what the government is trying to do, what is safe for the population. What I mean is this. I'm sure it hasn't escaped your attention. Maybe a week ago or so, UMNO youth leaders decided they were going to distribute 2,000 chickens on a first-come, first-served drive-through basis in Putrajaya. And this caused great congestion. More than 2,000 people arrived at the handout point expecting to be given free chicken. None of them were observing the standard operating procedures. None of them were were observing the Ministry of Health guidelines. And the sponsors of this event only got off with a compound. I find this to be abhorrent. Already there is danger. Already there is infection. Already there are rising death rates, rising mortality in this country. And you want to go and hold an event where people are going to be crowded in a confined area to give away free chicken. Where is your sense? You always talk about wanting to defend Malay rights, wanting to defend the rights of Islam, wanting to defend Muslims, etc., etc. And yet what you are doing goes against the grain of Islam, goes against what the Malays really need. You are wasting money on silly things. You are not putting money where it's supposed to be put. You are not putting money into education. You are not putting money into research, enough money. I mean, you are putting money, but you are not putting the right amount or a sufficient amount for research to be carried out, for education to be carried out, for more skilled professorial positions to be filled, for higher paying salaries for good professors. You are not doing any of that. On the contrary, you are preventing that from happening. You are not following Islamic guidelines. You are exposing people to danger when you know that danger exists. This is a sin. This is dosa besar, because you know this is a dangerous time. You are exposing people to risk by saying to them, come, I'm going to give you free chicken, knowing full well the mentality of the people here that anything free they will rush. And you call yourself a defender of the Malays, you call yourself a defender of Islam. You have no right to do that anymore. You have lost that right. Not only UMNO is responsible, I mean UMNO in the sense of the leaders of UMNO, not the UMNO ordinary members, the leaders of UMNO, the leaders of PAS, these two political entities which claim to defend the rights of the Malays and the rights of Islam and the Muslims. They have no authority to do so anymore. What they are doing is in reality satanic. Let me explain. The thing that Satan loves the most, and the thing that Satan's followers do, is this. It is not that they influence people to be immoral. It is not that they influence people to commit sin. It is not that they invite people to do abhorrent things. It is not that. The thing that is most pleasing to Satan is division, divisiveness. That is the thing that is most pleasing to Satan and his followers. What you have done, you, in other words, the leaders of UMNO and the leaders of PAS, for the past 50, 60 years, is a continuation of an attempt to divide not only the Malays, but also to divide the Malaysians. You have tried to put them into categories. This is a Malay, this is a Chinese, this is an Indian, this is so and so and so. This is a Muslim, this is a Kafir. What you are doing is un-Islamic. The guidelines of the Quran are very clear. You are not supposed to divide. You are supposed to you are supposed to unite, and you are not doing that. You have not done that, and that is disgraceful. And the fact that the ordinary members don't realize this is because you have already convinced them through your ideological preachings that what you are doing represents what Islam says, and that is not what Islam says. What you have done is you have corrupted what Islam has said. Both you, the leaders of UMNO, and the leaders of PAS. Ini dosa besar. Dosa besar. It is not right. And you continue to do this. You have lost legitimacy. Now is the time for you, the ordinary members, to think to yourselves, is my political allegiance to this party ideologically sound or not? Because I don't see any change within this country's racial discrimination without a change in political ideology from both these two large Malay political parties. Without an ideological change, nothing is going to change. That is true. Because up till now, since the time that UMNO was formed, as early as 1948, UMNO was formed in 1946, remember that. But in 1948, the president of UMNO at the time was telling the UMNO members that there was already division happening within UMNO itself amongst the Malays. There was already division happening amongst the Malays in the country. That was in 1948. Only 2 years after UMNO united the Malays to oppose the Malayan Union. That was only 2 years later. Already there were problems. And this is in 1948. We are now in 2021. Your divisive nature has continued since 1948 until 2021. And this divisive nature is because of your ideology. Your ideology needs to change. You cannot use your ideology's reasoning to be Islamic. It is not Islamic. It is the antithesis to Islam. Where Islam says to unite, you divide. This is not the way I would envision my country, Malaysia, to be. And I'm not about to wait until I'm old and infirm, or even until I die, for any change to happen. We have to endeavor to make the change now. You have to change your political ideology. Are you willing to do such a thing? In my opinion, and this is just my humble opinion, I have no confidence that the UMNO leaders today, or the leaders from past today, or for that matter, certain people in the ruling government today, have the capacity to change that ideology. When you think that this country belongs to you because you are a Malay, you should realize, as far as Islam is concerned, if you understand it properly, nothing truly belongs to you. You are only here as a trustee. You are only given an amana. You have not got any ownership. You are not going to take anything with you when you die. What you leave behind is what is important. If you leave behind a legacy of divisiveness, if you leave behind a legacy of chaos, then you have to be prepared to answer for that. If, on the other hand, you leave behind a legacy of unity, a legacy of progress, your name will be remembered for thousands of years perhaps. But from what I see today, you are not doing that. You need to change. And unfortunately, the leaders in UMNO and in PAS, they are still denying the fact that the people have rejected them in the last election. And they are still exhibiting that note of arrogance that they can do no wrong. This is not the kind of leaders you want. A kind of leader who cannot admit mistake. A kind of leader who cannot be putting himself in the proper place. A leader who has no tawadu'. You cannot follow this kind of person. Islam says you cannot divide, you must unite. But what you are doing is you are dividing, you are not uniting, and you continually and habitually doing. Which means you cannot learn another way. Which means you do not need to be in the position of authority trying to guide a flock, because you have already misguided them. I remember years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I used to see these bumper stickers on the cars that said, "We are Khalīfa of Allah." Really? Do you really think that you are Khalīfa of Allah? That is nonsense. They will say, well, look at the Quran. The Quran says Allah says He's going to create a Khalifa, which was mankind. And therefore we are Khalīfa of Allah. No. The Quran does say that, but you need to have a proper interpretation of that. The Khalifa refers to the fact that everyone has the potentiality to be a Khalifa, which means that you have to have authority, you have to have rule. And yet, you don't even have Khalifa over yourself. How do you think you are going to rule or have authority over yourself, your family, your country, your nation, if you don't even have authority over yourself? Sekiranya kita tiada berupaya mengatasi diri sendiri. You cannot, you have no right to call that. Which means that you have been brainwashed into thinking that you are of a superior race. That reminds me of something else. Not about the Muslims. It reminds me more of the Sha'bullah al-Mukhtar. Who are these Sha'bullah al-Mukhtar? These are the Israelites. The ones who consider themselves the chosen people. You are falling right into that position. And whose fault is that? Your leaders, your political leaders have led you along that path, have led you astray. Politics and political leaders have no authority, have no business to talk to you about religion, about theology, about language, about history. They have no authority at all. And yet, why do you put your trust in them? As far as I'm concerned, they are wakil ra'yat, they are wakil. They have yet to become yang berhormat. They should be yang dihormati. There's a big difference. The one who is ennobled and the one who is noble. We, on the other hand, when I say we, I mean the general population, follow blindly the advice of the politician simply because of his outward appearance, of what he wears, of how skillfully he is with reciting a verse from the Quran, or how skilled he is at pointing out one particular verse in relation to something else, even though it might be a mistake. And people become enamored by this. You are misguided. They have no authority. And yet, they consider themselves as having authority. Even when the rulers criticize them, they still don't take any heed. Even when the rulers say they shouldn't be doing certain things, they still don't listen. They still think that they are above that. This is your political leaders. Why? Why do you allow this to happen? I hope that this has been useful and that this is some food for thought. Until next time.